I think it's doing just fine, and it's going to be a good bill. And we have to remember Obamacare is dead as a doornail. It's over. It's a failure. But it would be so great if the Democrats and Republicans could get together, wrap their arms around it, and come up with something that everybody's happy with. It's so easy. But we won't get one Democrat vote, not one.
So there we have President Trump in an interview this morning, adding to the president's comments is a tweet last night about the 5 senators opposed to the current bill, in which he said, "I cannot imagine that these very fine Republican senators would allow the American people to suffer a broken Obamacare any longer." Now, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, is expected to score this bill and release those numbers tomorrow ahead of a vote, which is scheduled for the Senate later this week. Joining me now is Shannon Pettypiece, White House correspondent for Bloomberg News, and Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. Great to have you both on this morning. And Shannon, what's your understanding? Because President Trump has been using the phone, working the phones to drum up support for this. Has he made any inroads?
I mean, as far as we have with senators coming out saying they've changed their mind, no. If you look at what happened with the House bill, the president worked the phones, really tried to lay the pressure on, tried the carrot, tried the stick approach, tried the begging, pleading approach. It really was only when the members themselves came together and worked out deals among themselves, among leadership, to get this, to get enough votes together that we actually saw some momentum and a vote. And I think something similar will happen on the Senate. I don't think the White House at this point has the political capital and the political arm twisting to get members on board with this. If a deal is going to be struck, I think it's going to be among members themselves trying to work out a give and a take here and deciding on their own, what they need to compromise on.
So, Niall, have you heard about any of those changes, basically the carrots that could work behind the scenes to find that compromise, maybe Planned Parenthood or another area of funding where provisions that would defund, say, Planned Parenthood or Medicaid over time is really up for negotiation?
Theoretically, there could be some movement in some of these areas, Thomas. These are issues that people refer to as dialable. In other words, for example, with regard to the Medicaid expansion, you could perhaps dial up the period over which it is to phase out. But the central difficulty here is that there are real tensions between the conservative wing of the Republican Party and more moderate senators. Most of the people who've come out in opposition so far are conservatives like Ted Cruz, but we've also got Dean Heller from Nevada, representing a very different strand in Republican politics, and how you reconcile the imperatives for two senators like that is a politically difficult question.
And when we know how this is going to affect Medicare and Medicaid, Shannon, the president said that he was not going to have cuts to Medicaid. This is what he campaigned on, or Medicare for that matter, but it does cut back the expansion for Medicare by 2021, Medicaid an overhaul by 2025. How does the White House account for this, or are they just ignoring that issue?
I think they're trying to ignore it. I mean, in the press briefing, I think it was on Friday, I asked Sean Spicer about this again. Does the president support the Medicaid provisions in this bill? And, he just repeated that, yes, the president supports it. They will point, they point to the fact that, despite the cuts, nobody who's currently on Medicaid, if they stay in the program, would lose their coverage. But of course, if you're on Medicaid now, you get a job, your income disqualifies you, then you try and get back on. And of course, there's other cuts in it. But I think they're trying to say that, well, at least nobody who's on it now would be forced off under this bill is probably the best that they can point to on Medicaid.
All right, so the president has been tweeting about this and now also tweeting about the Russia investigation and how the Obama administration, if they knew so early on, why focus on Trump, and not so much on Obama. I know one of your colleagues is writing about the rank and file Democrats, urging them and its leaders to stop talking about Russia so much. What prompts the shift here? Is it that it's unnecessary for Democrats to talk about because Trump will open up and in the process shoot himself in the foot like we've seen before? Or is it something else?
Well, I think there are a couple of things here. I think one issue for Democrats is the idea that voters are not talking about Russia, that Democrats perhaps would be better spend their time better if they were talking about economic policy, about things that would seem to make a more tangible difference to kitchen table issues. Now, that's a separate issue from these tweets from the president this morning, where he has rather oddly been excoriating the Obama administration for not doing enough about Russian meddling in the election. Remember, the president has, up until this point, been very sceptical, to say the very least, about these allegations, has implied at various times that the thing is actually a hoax about Russian meddling. So quite bizarre, frankly, for him to now turn around and say that the Obama administration did not do enough to counteract Russian involvement or meddling in that election.
I mean, it can't be both. It either is or it isn't. And he seems to be affirming that the Obama administration and the intel that was given to the Obama administration did not go far enough to thwart what was happening and then what ultimately happened. And Shannon, we know that Julian Assange has now been tweeting about this last night, saying why the Democratic Party is doomed because of what he calls hysteria about Russia. And he also said that the Trump-Russia collusion narrative is a political dead end. Obviously, Assange serves his own purpose in all of this, but is there something bigger here? Because collusion is something that they're looking into with Mueller, but now one of the bigger issues that really triggered the Mueller special counsel is obstruction of justice.
Well, and I guess Julian Assange is entitled to his own political analysis and opinion, just like anyone else. I don't know if he has any, great insight into the Democratic Party or, the climate in America and sort of what needs to be done strategically going forward. But, to this broader point of the issues that the Democratic Party is facing, I mean, there are a number of people in the Democratic Party, Democratic strategists who, don't know if hanging their hat on Russia is going to be the best approach long term. And as this Mueller investigation plays out and the congressional investigations play out, we'll obviously get an answer to that, or at least some more clarity, if not a definitive answer. But of course, this investigation, you're opening a can of worms, and it could go down a lot of different paths now over the coming months or even years, whether it comes to obstruction of justice or collusion or any other things that happen when you have someone like Robert Mueller open up the books on
right. There could be a lot of forks in the road when it comes to what they're looking at and where they go. And now, real quickly, another shockwave that could come this week, just as the Supreme Court wraps up its current term tomorrow. What have you heard, the rumor mill swirling about the chances that Justice Kennedy is going to be announcing some retirement, Niall?
Well, there are heavy rumours about this from various quarters. The Supreme Court, of course, is inherently a very private organisation. We don't know about the provenance of those leaks, but certainly it will cause great consternation among Liberals were Justice Kennedy to retire. Not that he himself is ultra-liberal, but he's the swing vote. If he were to retire, that would clearly give President Trump the opportunity to replace him with a Conservative justice, and thereby there would be an inbuilt Conservative majority on the court. That would be a big problem from a Liberal perspective.
We shall all wait and see. Shannon, Pettypiece, Niall Stanage, great to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Thomas.
So the Medicare cuts out